Hello and welcome to the Film Ireland podcast, celebrating filmmaking, storytelling and cinema across the island of Ireland. In today's episode, we are delighted to partner with the Dinard British and Irish Film Festival. The 36th edition took place last month in Dinard, which is a gorgeous seaside town in Brittany where the French audiences really appreciate our cinema. And in a few moments, we'll be in conversation with Damian McCann, whose Irish language feature Aontas played to a packed crowd. And then we'll chat with filmmaker Joy Gharoro-Akpojotor, whose feature film Dreamers has been making waves on the festival circuit. Well, first we catch up with Dinard's artistic director Dominique Green to learn more about the festival. So thanks so much for chatting with us.
My pleasure.
So we're just back from what was just a really stunning festival, and it was my first time, and I must say the Irish contingent certainly enjoyed ourselves. I was wondering, first, could you tell me a little bit about the history of the festival?
Well, it began 36 years ago, and like many of these small festivals, it began as a way of extending the tourist season, of regenerating a little bit of activity in the festival, in the town, as well as a love for cinema, which the French have in buckets. So it began small, and over the years has grown increasingly, with a number of Irish and British co-productions being programmed, but as well as 100% Irish films been programmed into the festival. And my predecessors were able to do this without, I don't want to disrespect them, but without really kind of understanding the depth of what that meant. When I came in 6 years ago, as a Brit, I know exactly what it means. And I kept saying to my colleagues, it's like having a French film festival, but showing Belgian films. It's a different country. It's a completely different film industry. At the same time, there are very, very strong links of language, of people, of movement, families, etc. So I didn't feel I could put 100% Irish films. The co-productions were never a problem because they always fitted into the rules, if you want, the regulations. So I started a little section that I called Irish Eyes in Dinard, where I put the Irish films that I had selected, and it was a way of, let us say, them flying their own flag, and started a campaign to get the name changed to British and Irish, which came to fruition last year.
God, and it's lovely. And it's lovely to see the flags fly side by side. There's such a beautiful red carpet as well. It is really a celebration of culture. Over the years, how has the festival evolved? Because there's for a kind of a small enough town that there's a lot of dedicated cinema space that, like a filmmaker can expect to go in and have the sound and screen be really high quality and the seats be very comfortable and like it and to have their films viewed probably the way they were intended.
Well, part of that is down to, it has to be said, the French love of culture, and even small towns have decent theatres and what they call salles polyvalentes, multi-purpose spaces. So Dinard only has one cinema with 2 screens, the Emeraude. All the others are fitted for the festival, but they are spaces, venues that can be used for theatre, for concerts, for cinemas. When it's for cinema, we have to bring in the projectors and the projectionists. But yes, it is a high quality for what is effectively a really small seaside town. In the past, at one point, they had a inflatable blow-up cinema, but I put an end to that because it's not a way to show films. And by then we had the brand new Salle Debussy in the Palais of the Arts, which is very high level.
Programming a lineup like this, what are the things that go into consideration?
Well, I start off very open. It's a year-round process, and I track everything in the trade papers from my knowledge of the business with it, specifically for Ireland. I have a close relationship with Screen Ireland, who are wonderful in disseminating information. I look at what's coming up, what's ready, what's gone to Berlin, what's gone to Cannes, what could be going to Venice and I start the year with Sundance and then Berlin and then Cannes, then Venice and Toronto. And somewhere along the line, I discover what could be available, what might be available, what isn't available. I try and watch everything. And by May, I've really narrowed down 150 or 160 British and Irish titles to a more manageable number. And then I look to see if there are any discernible tendencies. And this year there was one which was a real return to social realism in the cinema, both in the UK and Ireland. And then start to look at how I can put the titles together in strands. In the past, it's always been a competition and then everything else. And I'm really against that because people just assume the competition films are better, which isn't necessarily the case. But there's reasons why you put things in a competition or not beyond the quality. I like to think the quality of everything I program is excellent. And this year in particular, we had two outstanding Irish documentaries, A Want in Her and Testimony. And with a small competition, it's very difficult to put a documentary in with features. We only have 3 prizes and one of them is for performance. So it really only leaves best film, which is difficult. So I tend not to put the documentaries in competition.
Tell me about the slogan for the festival. Where did that come from?
Well, this year I chose New Voices, New Stories because it was evident to me there was a new generation of filmmakers coming through the ranks that had very different stories to tell from, 20 years ago or even 10 years ago.
God, that's great. And yeah, there was some, I think you could see that in the worlds that were being shown on screen. There was such a variety. Do you think that has a sort of greater impact in the types of films that are being made in general? That there's like a hunger in the audience for those?
Well, I think it has a very big impact on the types of films that are being made, and that's also because the gatekeepers of the funding for making films are very aware of that. Remains to be seen whether the audiences rise to that challenge. That I think it's a bit too early to say.
One of the things that I noticed, there was such an energy around the audience. So, like an industry festival, everyone is a filmmaker who's there, but like there was a jam-packed, like they're decent sized venues and there's a lot of bums on seats. And they're into the films. You can feel it. There's like that electricity and even people standing outside for the red carpet. Talk to me about, again, you're probably cultivating for your own tastes, but then also the audience of the audience.
Yes, well, I'm very aware that it's a French audience and we're in France, because there are cultural differences. I'm also aware that Dinard and the whole area of Brittany has a huge affinity to Gaelic culture, to Ireland, to Scotland, more so than a town, say, in the south of France would have. So that's also a factor, and I've noticed every year the Gaelic language films are the first to sell out. It's quite extraordinary. There's a real affinity for it. Um, so I try and get a mixture of things that I know will please, to break through to things that they might not know about or care about or want to see. Um, like all French audiences, and in particular in Dinard, which is quite an elderly audience, it must be said. It is a retirement town as well as a town in its own right. Um, they love an Empire lined frock and rolling Yorkshire countryside. And I really try to move away from this idea of, not that I have anything against Jane Austen, but against that kind of notion of what Britain is. And also, with Ireland, the stereotypes of the rolling green hills and the rest of it. So I try and push the boundaries out a little bit. And this year, I was very interested to see. I programmed Danny Dyer's film Marching Powder, which had very mixed reception in England. And Danny Dyer's a very divisive figure. Personally, I thought the film was hilarious. And I thought it was a very pointed critique, both of middle class culture and working class culture, as well as just being funny. Um, and I took a lot of care in writing the synopsis for that to make it sound like a comedy. And it paid off. It sold out very quickly. The audience really enjoyed it, and it is a completely different view of British cinema than the Empire Line frocks.
I will, yeah, definitely. And in terms of like the balance, like mixing that with, kind of like heartfelt emotional dramas and kind of quiet coming of age pieces that were all in there, and then like underdog heist movies, which were fantastic. Um, like, are you always aware that everything has to sit in a program? And like where it goes, does it make a difference, or are you kind of like knowing people will probably pick things in isolation?
Well, I am very aware of how it sits in a program, hence the strands of very light regrouping of types of films. Um, and I think any programmer has to be. You can't have, a program of 30 films and have 25 social dramas. It doesn't work. But at the beginning, I'm not that aware of that. I really look at films for what they are and whether I want to include them. And that's what I was saying, that around May, I start to look at how they could all fit together. And, I'm also looking at having, diversity, not just in the cultural sense, but in the types of filmmaking, in the types of subject matters, in diversity in its standard definition of racial, if you want, diversity. But more than that, of just really showing a 360-degree vision of what the two countries are.
Like that caliber of jury as well. Like, I know as a filmmaker, it must be so special to know the level of people that are looking at it. Talk to me about like working with the jury and where you find names like Rupert Everett to, like, for example.
Well, I mean, Rupert Everett, in a way, is a natural choice because of his connection to France. He's lived there a long time. He speaks French fluently. He's a mainstream figure in the UK. He's a writer. His whole association with Oscar Wilde, of course, which then crosses, the triangle, and an author. But it took a long time to get him because, first of all, he's very busy. And Yes, I mean, we always go for people of a high caliber. Then it's a question of negotiating with them, with the agents. There's also a certain level of personal connections, who knows who, um, whether they're free. Uh, I'd worked with Kristen Scott Thomas many years ago when I lived in France and worked at Canal Plus. Um, Whether that's what got us the film, I can't answer that because there are too many external things. But those sorts of relationships help, that's for sure. And of course, it was wonderful to have her come again, another Franco-British co-production. She really works in both cultures. So and the French jury, it's done by a colleague of mine, Sylvie Poutrel, and we try and get, a real range of people. Rupert helped enormously this year with his connection to Jennifer Saunders and Ruby Wax. So, once you've got the president, the rest follows a little bit more easily.
I think as well, one of the things that was so exciting being on the ground there was just that level of polish and production design, and it is very elevated in terms of what you expect. The red carpet, the announcers when you go in, the award ceremonies, the opening night. It's big.
Yes, well, it is. The number of things I have to say here. One is the French savoir-faire, which is at a different level than what we do here, or what we can do here. The other is the commitment of French audiences to cinema. I mean, they really are extraordinary, of all ages, and they'll take risks and they'll go and see everything and anything. And that's an energy you wouldn't get in an equivalent town in the UK or Ireland. And then practice makes perfect. I mean, 36 years, we sort of got it down to a fine art. So, we know what to do on which day and how to do it. The biggest challenge to all of that is escalating prices, the budgets for all these activities, not just in Dinard, everywhere is just going through the roof. And festivals are becoming very difficult to sustain.
And I suppose the difficultness is when you're at a level, it's hard to drop down. Like, do you know, people have an expectation, people will be disappointed. Like, Irish people are terrible for that. They're like, didn't know that last, last year was better. Yeah, that it's in terms of organizing, that's a lot of pressure, I suppose, to maintain, because again, this, the standard is.
Yeah, the budget has remained the same for 3 years, but with 10 to 15% inflation, it's effectively dropping. And the travel in particular costs have gone through the roof. So bringing people to Dinard, which is quite difficult to get to, as you might.
It's worth it, though. It's certainly worth it.
Yeah. And there's just one other thing I wanted to say about the programming. With regards to the programming, it doesn't really matter what my methodology is. The fact of the matter is I can only program with what exists. And from one year to the next, it's higher or lower. And that's the same for every national cinema. They're cycles. You have good years, you have fallow years, you have so on. So one can only work, because I only show films within the last 14 months. Don't do retrospectives and so on. So you're at the mercy of what exists.
At this stage, are you thinking about next year? Are you kind of looking at what's coming out Do you have any ideas, or are you in the period now where you're like, I just don't want to think about that particular element for like a couple of months?
Well, I am in that period and I don't want to think about it, but I have a tracking list already with over 150 titles on it. So some of them will be things that were announced as being in production over the summer and autumn, which could be ready next year. Some of them are films that went to Venice or Toronto that I wasn't able to have because I don't, I have no illusions that they'll world premiere in Dinard. And yes, and the rest is just what I track. But I'll only really start very seriously that part of it in January.
Over the years, what has been the best received Irish film? Like in your experience, like the thing that kind of got the most glowing review in your time there?
It has to be The Quiet Girl. I mean, it really touched people's hearts in France as it did worldwide. But I must say that I had it in the program before its Oscar campaign started and before it really took off. So I was very lucky to have it. And then Con came the following year on the jury, which was really nice. Um, Arashed, I'm probably not pronouncing
Oh, Iraqed, yeah.
it properly. What?
I'm not great either. I'm not like
Was the first Irish language film that I had programmed, and I couldn't believe that it was sold out almost as soon as tickets went on sale. I mean, that was a real surprise to me, but a lesson that I learned very quickly. And yes, also, being a fishing community here. I mean, it's not a town of fishermen anymore, but Brittany is very linked to the fishing industry. That film touched a lot of people. Yeah. And then, I mean, the documentary's testimony. 3 sold out shows this year.
wow.
3 sold out shows for a very difficult documentary.
That's brilliant, and it's great to see women filmmakers as well getting getting bums on seats. So that's wonderful, and thank you so much for chatting with us. We really look forward to see what's programmed next year.
Oh, it's my pleasure, and I look forward to receiving you next year in Dinard.
At the festival, I got to catch up with Damian McCann about his film Aontas, in which 3 unlikely women rob an Irish rural credit union. So have a listen back to our conversation here. Thank you so much for chatting with us.
Thank you very much.
Oh my God, that's such an exciting film.
Yeah.
I was wondering if you could tell me a little bit about where the idea came from.
So this is my second film. I made one called Damian a few years ago. And I think when I finished the first movie, you always have a moment to sort of decide what it is you might want to do next, what type of genre if you could, you would do next. And I just had it in my head that I wanted to make a heist movie. Those are the types of movies that I always watched as a kid, and I thought it would be an interesting way to do it. So my wife, Sarah Gordon, writes with me, and we started the research on how you would rob a bank, which is not something you can Google very easily. But I went...
You'd be on a list.
You'd be on a list, yeah. Exactly. It'll be flagged somewhere. So I went back to my hometown where my parents are, because I thought maybe they would know of stories of the local bank being robbed, and they had tons. They had endless amounts of ideas. But my mum had said something that I didn't know. She said, when I worked in the bank, here's how it was robbed. And she mentioned a couple of times it was robbed, she worked there. Yeah. And I didn't know she had worked in a bank. So I said to her, he started saying, where's the safe and when's the money moved and all sorts of things like that. And she said, if I was going to rob a bank, here's how I would do it. And then she had this really long list of ways. She's been thinking about it for years, obviously. And the list was great. It was pretty foolproof. I was almost going to go up and rob a bank myself after it. But it just made me and Sarah think that the interesting thing for us wasn't necessarily the logistics of how you would rob a bank, but why someone like my mum would rob a bank. And so that was the sort of start of it. It was more about why these people were doing this. And traditionally in a heist movie, you know, they start with the why they're doing it, and it builds to a how. And we had decided to flip the narrative, so it starts with the how. So you see the bank being robbed right at the start, and then you're building to why these people have done it.
And the ensemble is amazing as well. The chemistry and how you set up. It's like Memento meets Begonia.
Okay,
But Irish language. Yeah. And having women.
Which is exactly what we were picking.
It was over meetings.
Yeah, I mean, the cast were great. I mean, you know, it's so much of it's, you know, any film, which you'll know already, is based upon your cast. And like, we were just so lucky with the people we had. Some of them I had worked with previously, the likes of Breach Brennan, who was in my first film, and Sean T. O'Malley was in the first film. And then some of the other new people that came on board, and it just worked out great. I was kind of blessed with the people that I had.
So is it you or Sarah who kind of is advocating for such strong female characters at the centre?
You know, I don't think we ever really discussed it per se. I mean, I think because of the story about my mum robbing the bank, that it felt natural that was a starting point. Like, it veered wildly from it, but it just meant that the protagonist was female.
Yeah.
And then it never became a thing. You know, it wasn't any specific decision to do it that way. And like, a lot of the conversation was like, if my mum was going to rob a bank, who would she get to help her? And I was like, my auntie Kathleen's definitely going to be there. And then we have a neighbour across the road from him, and I thought she would do it too. So you kind of start to round out the cast based on the kind of the facts that you know or how you want it to go. So that's kind of how the story came about.
And in terms of developing the characters, so there's a real like Happy Valley energy to Carrie's character. Like, in terms of, so the plot is the first thing that you guys come up with, and then you put in the characters, and then do you work out arcs? Like, what's the process?
Oh, jeepers, now you're pushing me. I'm not totally sure. I mean, I think we had that first bit, and then, you know, the idea that why would my mum rob a bank? And then, you know, it just, the idea of revenge seemed like, you know, seemed appropriate as opposed to stealing money.
But a lot of people are afraid of angry women.
Yeah.
But you leaned into it, which I really, really enjoy, because I feel like it's more truthful.
But, well, these are the people I know. I mean, and Sarah's the same. You know, I'm not naming shame, but we were thinking of specific people a lot of the times when we were writing the characters, because that's how you find the traits and the voice, and like, that's maybe just the people I know and how they might react, as opposed to any preconceived notion as to how, you know, someone might, you know, work in that, or any type of tropey sort of attitude as to how someone might do it. So you try and ground it in reality, and the way to do that is to try and think of the people who you know and, you know, kind of cling on to that. So
when did you guys go in for this scheme? Or is it co-production? Because I wasn't sure how the logos work together.
Yeah. So the first film I did, Dinian, it was sort of the same funders, same scheme, effectively.
But it's not Cinecar.
No, it's not Cinecar. No, we're not quite that high in terms of budget. Our funders were the Irish Language Broadcast Fund in the North, who do great things, TG Car and BBC Gaeilge. And then it was our own company. We formed our own company, and it was our own company that Puka Pictures that actually made the film. So it's not, we are usually lumped in with the Cinecar, but we're definitely not anywhere near that.
Yeah, because I was like, there hasn't been one in a while, and I was like, where's it this film? And
yeah, no, we come left field because we come out of the north as well. I guess, you know, it's all, you know, effectively, you know, it's the primary funders are northern, all the crew are northern, you know, all the northern spend is there as opposed to southern spend through Screen Ireland or whatever. Yeah.
Okay, and in terms of pitching the sort of reverse order structure of this, was there any pushback to that? Did that take a bit of explaining? Because, like, you know, in a pitch, when you have X amount of time sometimes, or was it like, actually, no, this is further?
I mean, I think if it had been my first film, it might have been trickier, but I think you earn a bit of grace when you've made one, and there's an extra amount of trust there that you've done it before, you know what you're doing. There were definite questions as to how it would work, but, you know, I think people bought into the idea of a contemporary Irish language film that was there hasn't been a heist movie before, and also that was being done in a different way. I think people were kind of into that,
And there's elements of like, even though it is serious and very emotional, there is elements of like lightness through it. I think maybe humanity through it. We can say comedy, but there's like what's the word? Like, there'd be like a funny comment here. Like, it isn't this weighty, oppressive thing. It brings you on a journey and you're kind of following it the whole way.
Yeah, that's Sarah. The lightness end, I don't know. That's Sarah. But I think it sort of makes sense. Like, I think an audience can only take in a film like this that's already complex, in terms of its structure and its plotting. There's only a certain amount of heavy material you can take on top of that without moments of lightness or even just interpersonal moments between two characters where it's a bit of fun but that's very much Sarah. That's her. She's an expert at that stuff. Yeah.
Because I do feel like, even though it's almost in an ensemble, like, I mean, Carrie probably is the star of the show, but you really have arcs for everyone. And I would say, like, there's lovely men, not all men, but actually it depends on them off. Like, some they're like, it is that men are the antagonists.
Yeah.
But like, what's very interesting is, like, you go into the psychology, and you said this yourself, was like, this is the why the film is like that. Like, so you're kind of basing things on people. Like, are there discussions on this? Are you kind of like working out how Bridget's character's trauma response affects this, or like, and I don't want to give too much away.
I know, I was like, spoilers allowed.
Really, there's so much happening that I was like, that's like one section of one section, but it's like there's so much sort of unraveling. Like, it's so tight, and it's so tightly spooled. Like, were there any bits basically that everything was all over the table and you're like, what do you have? Or are you kind of, is it like something that you build?
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of crying. I remember that, a lot of crying about it. Mostly me. But you take it bit by bit and just assume that some stuff's going to fall in order. So, you kind of have the outline of what might happen and then you add to it. But in terms of characters, you sort of want each character to be on their own journey and not excuse their actions, but to kind of give some context to it. And I mean, I think that's important to us as writers. It's like to try and take as much judgment out, or certainly black and white judgment out of it.
So are you working on instinct, not structure then? Or is there like
when it comes to character, it's instant. There's no, there's not the same amount of planning. When it comes to plotting, of course, it's, you have to make sure everything's in the right order and everything's clicking into place. And even the way Sarah and I break down the writing, I suppose I'm more on the macro end of it in terms of the structure of it, and then Sarah's on the micro end of her whole thing, scene craft, and how the characters arc within the scenes. But it is that thing we always talk about it, and you hear it loads. I'm sure endless amount of writers say it, but there's this thing: hurt people. And that's always a useful thing to keep in the back of your head when you're writing any character. Like, even your antagonist, you kind of don't want to be too black and white with it and make them too much of an arch villain. You kind of want to know, well, why are they like that? Because in the audience, whilst they maybe won't cheer for them, they might kind of understand the complexities of the situation, and also even, we base it in a small community, how each of the people are kind of knitted together historically. The reverse chronology is one thing. It runs backwards from start to end.
That really works.
I think what it did do that I maybe hadn't anticipated, that I think is useful, is that you have all of these characters are trapped in their past. They have all some sort of hang-ups, and it's why they're acting the way they're acting. But as an audience member, you're not offered that past. You're only offered them in the present moment, and you judge them on their present actions. And then as you move backwards, you start then to get more context to it. I think there was something useful. There's something like almost like unpeeling an onion of it. That as you went along, you sort of understood how all of these people ended up in this one situation.
And probably by following the characters, everything was justified. And I don't want to give too much away, but there's a few little bits that maybe you're not expecting. And I didn't flag them. I didn't flag any of them. I was like, oh, nice.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, you know, it's funny, like once you shift it backwards, you know, to a certain extent, you get people going in that it's a heist movie, but once you move it backwards, it becomes a drama. It totally changes the genre of what it is. But what it also sort of becomes...
Someone described it as noir. I was like,
Yeah.
I couldn't see the noir. Like, maybe everyone sees different things and things. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh.
Yeah, it's funny because when we were writing it, part of me always thought it was like a mystery almost, you know, because some of the elements you're talking about, you know, you kind of start to put a wee puzzle together as to what they are.
But I think the noir, and one thing that is the defining thing is it's systemic, and it's the system is broken, and it's everything is wrong. And I was like, no, this is like people are damaged.
Yeah.
You're very empathetic to everybody, and it isn't that kind of like oppressive weight of one person against that. That was the thing that I was like, but the mystery thing completely, and it was really lovely unraveled, and it felt like everything was justified. It was lovely to watch.
Yeah, but the other thing is, I think it sort of teaches you early on that, you know, there's something about making a movie that gets the audience to do some of the work, and some people won't want that. They won't necessarily want to you have to concentrate.
Did you get pushback from that? Did you get people saying, "Oh, that won't work"?
No, like I don't think so necessarily. I mean, we used to get the odd comments about that you might have to do a bit more heavy signposting in terms of, you know, a strap maybe that says 3 days earlier or something. But I always had assumed that the audiences are so clever now. You know, they've seen it all, so they work out very quickly. You know, they might be confused in the first 10 minutes, but provided the scenes are working, you hope that they'll hang on long enough. And then there's something interesting about every time, you know, the film runs in, say, 10-minute blocks. Every time you jump back 10 minutes, you have to completely recontextualize what you know about the film. I think that's, you know, audiences, certainly on the festival circuit, I don't know how to work on TV, but on the festival circuit, people seem to enjoy the work of, you know, figuring it out, whereas maybe TV's built possibly towards second screen. And
I'd watch a Detective Happy Valley style Irish language series where Carrie Farley and, you know, Gargi were all policing like criminals any day of the week.
Yeah, exactly.
Any day.
I'm not niche. That's...
No, I think like a lot of households, we all would.
Yeah, I mean, Happy Valley is interesting because it did come up, like when we were talking about, there were some, you know, Memento's the one that is always mentioned. Of course, we did sort of talk about it, but not as much as something like Happy Valley, where it was more character driven, more character led. It just so happens that the reverse chronology, the first thing you think of possibly is Memento, that non-chronological. And I mean, if anyone compares it to Memento, I'm never going to say that's an awful thing. But yeah, it's funny. It's like a Happy Valley and a few other films similar to that, where the kind of touchstones in terms of the protagonist, the main character.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, if anyone's looking for crime series, it should definitely be. And you're talking about festival, how it's received at festivals, because it has screened at a few places.
Yeah, it has.
Like, have you noticed audiences like processing it differently?
Yeah, you could. I was just talking I was with Breach Brennan here earlier. We're both over at the festival, and you know, people used to always, you know, I used to always hear that, you know, you'd hear actors saying that when they're on stage, you can feel the room, you can feel the audience and kind of gauge your reaction. I never fully understood that until I started touring with this film, because some places it really works, and in other places the reaction seems more, you know, muted maybe.
But are they like Nordics and stuff? Like, Nordics just don't react to things.
Yeah, I haven't got that far yet, but I'd be interested to see. Like, every time I go to a new country now, I'm like, oh, I wonder how this will go down. So we haven't I played the Shanghai International Film Festival, which such, you know, interesting audience there. Really questions, you know, and talking about things that maybe other festivals in America wouldn't necessarily talk about. You know, they were just more interested in kind of the small town dynamics and the kind of sort of, I guess there's a certain commentary on capitalism, and obviously in China that was the thing they lent on, whereas maybe in America it's more about the structure and the build of it and things like that, you know, and comparisons to westerns, ironically.
That I never made.
Yeah,
that connection I never. That's very.
But it is funny. I did too. The first time I ever talked to Carrie Crowley, I said it was John Wayne. The character was John Wayne, which she was like, what? But that kind of strong, silent, you know, type seemed to. That's what I thought.
Yeah, Oh, they get so good. And here, what was it like? What has it been like?
Yeah, it seems to me to be good. You know, the feedback seems great, and we've played. I think we played about 25 festivals so far, and we've another 15 coming maybe. So it is doing the rounds, and people I think seem to be enjoying it. I hope.
Oh, fabulous. And what has your experience been at Dinard?
It's great. Yeah. It's been great. Like very, everything's highly scheduled, and it's very professional, and even
Production value is very impressive.
amazing. Like the room we were in today for the screening was an old, big old room kind of thing. All the tickets were sold out. So there's obviously there's a big draw here for the festival, and we were very happy. Sarah, the co-writer, won it for best short a few years ago. So
Oh, really?
yeah. So it was nice to kindly. Well, I got over. Sarah never got over, but
Well, fabulous, because it's the first year Ireland is in it, I think, or we're like one of the first years. So it's like it's actually you kind of straddled.
yeah. And I think we're holding our own. Like in terms of the Irish movies that are playing, they're really high quality. The Christie's and Spilt Milk and The Want and Her, all these,
Damn.
the damn thing. I think we're really holding our own here. So it's kind of exciting to be part of that first wave of Irish filmmakers and invading Dinard per se.
Fabulous. Oh, well, enjoy and congratulations. And can't wait. And there will be a broadcast coming, but
Next year.
go see it in a cinema if you can.
Yes, please do.
I also got to catch up with writer-director Joy Gharoro-Akpojotor about her feature film Dreamers. So have a listen to that trailer here.
When we are both out, I would take you on a proper date.
I see how you look at each other. I think it's beautiful.
You've applied for asylum. Why can't you be gay in Nigeria?
It's illegal. Don't give up. What will our home be like?
We will make it ours.
Well, first of all, you came to this from producing, but even before your entry into film, what has been your journey into the industry?
I've always been somebody who loved stories. And I think when I did film studies, I was like, no, I really, really want to make film. And the first show I made, because I used to work in a betting shop, the guy or the manager was like, oh, there's another manager. He's a director. He's got a bit of money saved up. He wants to make a film. And I was like, you make films. I mean, at that time, I didn't make anything. It's just at uni. And we hooked up, we spoke, and I was like, sure, I'll help you out. He had $3,000, and we made this 15-minute short film. And I remember one of the actors was like, oh, Joy, you make a good producer. And I was like, why? She was like, because you're honest. Because I was very much like, we don't have money all the time to everybody. And I told people what was really happening.
And there's wheeling and dealing to that end of things as well. Do you know? Yeah. Like there's a charm and an extroversion where if he can get things.
Yeah.
Especially.
And it was a lot of, I realized I was good at just talking to people and just, I think by being honest with people, what happened was that they could see no, I really don't have that money or we don't have that money, but I could see the kind of intention and that we were just trying to make something happen. So for me, that's something I carry through continuously through all of my films generally.
And then talk to me about making the switch from producing then to directing.
Yeah, I mean, I really have to compartmentalize whenever I do it. What I find, I can start with a bit that I find challenging because as a producer, I think our brains are so practical. And as a director, writer, I had to learn to not be as practical. So in the writing of things, I had to learn to...
Did you have to give up the trust of going, okay, this will work out?
Yeah.
For a long time, you'd be like, I'll sort this out. This is going wrong. I'll sort this out. This is what we'll do. We don't have enough budget. How do we make it work?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then to go, no, this is the, and leave that with someone else because that must
You
be...
do. You have to... I mean, luckily for me, I had Emily, who's an amazing producer, and we're very open in our conversations. But a lot of the times, for me... I was always like, should I do this? Because can we afford this? And and you start limiting yourself because the producer in me is telling me A, B, C, D might not be possible. Whereas if you're just a writer-director, you just do.
Yeah.
But I do think it's helpful when it came to shooting, the producer knowledge is very helpful because it helped me figure out some other stuff on set. But I think the lead up to that and the most challenging thing was trusting other people to be a producer, and me not trying to figure out how to produce, and also control. I think as a producer, I think we're all control freaks as producers, and to an extent as a director as well. But I think having to just let go, that was challenging. But after a while, I got there. But it was a challenge in just switching roles. Yeah.
Yeah. And now let's go into writing this really, really, really gorgeous script. What was the process? Where did the idea come from?
So it's loosely based on my life, and the script has gone through so many versions. Because also partly because I had to go through so many versions of therapy. But
Was the script therapy, or was it like shaking things up a bit too much?
It was. The script now is, I think, the character of Issy is who I had to learn to become. I think for me, when I went through my asylum process, I did sort of feel like, oh, but I'm the good immigrant. I'm like, I've done this, I've done that. I'm like, and then suddenly it doesn't matter anymore. Like once you're in the system, you're just a name and a number. And I remember like when I first went to go claim asylum and they take away your passport and everything and give you like an ID card, and you feel so stripped of who you are, and you're just a number, not really a name anymore. And I think there was a lot of stuff for me to kind of like learn and understand my own fear of immigration. And I think for the character of Issy, she has to learn that she does have power in her situation. Like she has the power of choice, and we all have the power of choice. And I think sometimes we forget there are choices to be made. So when I started writing the story, originally it was, at one point it began with Farah already dead. And at one point Farah died later on. But I think what was consistent through every version was the love between Issy and Farah. And for me also...
And are they two senses of selves?
Yeah. And like, somebody who understands the world isn't what it presents to be, that you have to see it for what it is and make your own decisions. And you can't let other people make decisions for you. Like once you understand this is how the system works, then you understand your place in it. And that's Farah's character, whereas Issy's character is somebody who is like, yeah, but they said go left, so I went left. They said go right, so I went right. And without thinking about why we're making those choices. And then she realizes, oh my God, that's why. And this is what it means. And I think that's what I had to do in my own life. So I always feel like me and Issy are the journey of coming to a realization is probably the same. Because I think I also had that journey of realizing that I had made immigration a monster because of what I had gone through. So there was a lot of stuff around figuring out in story world how to tell a story of a woman who finds herself, but through love and through friendship and community. And I think that was more the journey I was going on. But I think where I began the story was very much, I had gone through something and I was like, I want to tell people or try and show people a different aspect of immigration. Because I think sometimes what happens is you see these immigration stories, there's usually like, whether it's the boat crossing, like as in us seeing the trauma of like they're coming across, or a different kind of trauma. But I think we rarely position love in these spaces, or like the idea of like community. And I know it's hard in these spaces, but at the same time, I think as people, they're just trying to live and they're trying to find the hope. Because I think of my situation, and what kept me going was the idea of hope. I didn't think about the bad things. They linger in the back of your head, but you're sort of going, but what if it does work out? What if this does happen? And that's what makes you keep going. I think I was trying to also get to that point in the story as well.
And as a sort of creative telling those stories, Is there a reason that maybe telling that story and then we're telling different types of stories earlier on, is there like, did it take you a while to get there, or is it just now you're being given space to tell those stories?
I think it's, God, I would say it took me a while to get here. Part of that was, I think, I've been trying to write the story, and then it was just during the pandemic. So actually, maybe it's in the last 4 years I finally figured it out. During the pandemic, where I was doing all of my therapy, because that's what you do during the pandemic, is have therapy. And I was like, okay, I realized there were things that I hadn't yet sorted out in terms of my own experience. And then, and I hadn't been home to Nigeria for like years. And so, what are we, 2025? So my brother got married in 2023. And that was my first time going back in like 10 years. And it was when I got there that I wrote the version that we have now. There was something about literally being able to like face your demons. And I think it was
Like, they're in there.
and well, yeah,
visually,
literally, they were facing the
powerful,
demons.
yeah.
And I think it was a mixture of like, I had this fear of going back, and then I finally did it, and I think because I had braced myself for like, you're of a certain age, you're not married, people ask questions all the time, and I basically have to become straight again for like going back and be in the closet, which is always a weird thing of like, just trying to ignore all the questions. And I think when I went back, I mean, honestly, there was like a day where I just was like, I think I have the film. And I think I spent like 4 days just like writing, because like, obviously at this point I knew the characters, I knew the world. So I spent 4 days and I like rewrote the entire film, which is different to what I had previously, like, I don't know, 2 months before that. But I think that happened because I suddenly was like, oh my God, I think I understand the things that I've been afraid of. I've finally faced them, and I'm okay.
Yeah.
And it's not as bad as I thought it was going to be. Like, it was like, it was bad, but it was that thing of like, my brothers are great. Like, they would like bat off questions here and there. There'll be things like, oh, but why aren't you married yet? And they'll be like, we're not married either. Like, because for the people there is like, well, I'm 30, tomorrow's 38. And, but my brother was like 40, 41. And they're like, we're not married. What's the big deal? And they were like, oh, but it's different for a woman. And then there'll be questions like, just how I dress, like, oh, all these tattoos, or like I wear trousers, not enough dresses, all these different things that sort of like make you kind of go, oh, what if they know I'm gay? And then I'm trying to almost like hide my gayness whilst I'm there. And so it was an interesting experience for me, but I think that unlocked something in me.
Because could you put yourself into your character?
I could definitely.
Viscerally?
I was more with my characters, but I think I was more with myself. And I think I found confidence from going back that allowed me to write this version. And I think by me going back and by me facing my demons, I think it goes back to like that issue at the end where she's gone through everything, she's facing her demons, and whatever is going to happen next, mentally she's prepared. And I think that was what it was for me, was that going home and dealing with everyone and these things, and even though I had to like put myself back in the closet again, I think mentally I was like, I can do this again, and I'll be okay, and I'll be stronger each time. And so it doesn't matter what people say or do. I kind of know how to like jump around it, skirt around it, but to protect myself. And I think for the character of Isio, in that journey, I was like, okay, this is somebody who needs to learn that she has a voice. This is somebody who needs to learn that she has a choice. That choice may not always be the right choice, but sometimes the wrong choice is the right choice, and sometimes the right choice is the wrong choice. And I think when you're placing systems that are meant to essentially oppress you, it doesn't really matter what choice you make. It's going to do what it does. And I think she realizes that no matter how many times she tells her story, it's just going to tell her no. And for me, I want the audience to watch the film and be like, oh, but I can see she's gay. Like, she's literally falling in love, but they're still saying, no, you're not gay. But that's just what happens all the time.
To get to your process, so we kind of got to the end of the process, but I was wondering what the middle of that process was like. The whole time it's in with the Joy's she's sort of overseeing, like, her company is overseeing it. Are you submitting drafts? Are you guys putting in for slate funding? Do they have slate funding, or are you working with script editors as well?
Yeah, so like we were at the BFI. And Emily came on board in 2020, literally just before the pandemic happened. So actually, I wasn't, because we were like, okay, which way should we go? And then 2020, I met Emily, and she was just like, oh, this is great. But I want more of you in it. And she was just like, you have all this like joy in you, excuse the pun, but she was like, she has all this joy in you, Joy. Like, can we see more of that in it? And I was just like, it's not really a joyful film. I don't know what she's talking about. And then we met again in Berlin. And then the pandemic happened. But she agreed to do it. And then we started the process of like, okay, let's really try and... Because she too was like, I like it, but it can't be too social realism. She wanted a bit more of like elevated genre to it. And so we began that journey together of just trying to crack down on the story a bit more, which took us a while. And we worked with Kate Lees, the script editor, who I absolutely adore. And Kate is like, you know, she'll break the script apart and then help you put it back together in the most loving way.
Was there beats where you were like,
I mean,
this character, we have done X?
There were times I was like, I can't do any more of this. I'm so tired.
Because what I think what it is sometimes like we dig ourselves into a hole so you can't see it.
Yeah,
falls the way other people.
That was kind of like what was happening with me. I think I was just like, I think sometimes you get to the point where you're like, I'll write whatever you tell me to write, and suddenly it's not even about what you want anymore. I kind of got there where, you know, what comes out is a mess of a script because you know what the story is, but you're so frustrated. Just like, I'm just going to write whatever, take it, let's go make it. But I think that one of the things Kate made me realize, hence why therapy is good, is I was holding too close to Issio. Like, I didn't want her to be a bad character. I didn't want her to be like, have any flaws. So every version, it was like, oh, it's not working, what's not working? And I realized my main character wasn't working because she just wasn't real. She was somebody who felt like, not perfect, but somebody who felt like she did no wrong. And it was like after therapy, I was like, okay, I need to allow this character to have some flaws and to kind of be a bit petulant in the beginning, to kind of be a bit like, no, I got to the point where I realized that actually, this is a character who thinks she knows better than anybody else because she's lived in the outside world, you know, she's been honest. So there was a version in which, like, before she comes into the center, we see her and she's saying to the immigration officer, like, he's like, oh no, I'm here to do the right thing, you know, I'm being honest. I'm like, you know, I'm doing what I'm meant to do. And they're just like, yeah, sure, whatever, like, system's a system. So when she comes in, for her, it's like, I'm not meant to be here. Like, I should not be here. And Farah's like, yeah, nobody's meant to be here. That's the reality. But I think is a character who realizes, like, she isn't better than anyone. She realizes that just because she lived in London for a bit, it doesn't mean anything to the system. It doesn't mean anything to, like, once you're in that space, you're all the same, you're all equal, you get treated the same. I think when I realized that, it shifted something in the script writing. And then also me and Emily did a short film together because we didn't know if we could work together. We didn't know what that would look like.
Yeah.
It turns out it was fine. And also during that process of writing the short, we also had to work together and figure the film out as well. And I think what was nice was that Emily she would have my
deal
back.
with stress. Do you know, like there's a lot of stress. Everything goes wrong.
But I'm a very chill person. That's the good thing. But also because I'm quite a practical person, I can usually be like, okay, give me 2 days rehearsal, and I'll be fine, and I'll make it work. And she'll always try and give me what I need. I think because I think the producer means I'm very like, okay, structured in that sense. The stress part, I try to be as calm as possible, but I think that's the producer in me learning how to deal with stress anyway. So I think that helps a lot on set. But we did that film, but I think what was good for me was working with BBC on notes and stuff. Because I think that then helped me prepare my mind for the feature.
But this was at the time when you were getting notes for your.
I was getting notes, yeah. I was doing all that stuff, but I think it was also because I think getting edit notes and script notes are two different things. I think edit notes are not just it's about the cut. It's about like, it's about the music. It's about the sound. Yeah. It's about the grade. That was my first time doing any of that properly. And so it was okay, they really give you notes and everything. So that was a learning experience that I think definitely helped me in the feature film world of going, okay, this is what to expect it.
And this was the only hill to die on.
Yeah, and you have to know what hills to die on. You have, like, when it came to the feature, I was like, there's some notes I'm like, okay, fine, I'll change that. Like, I may not agree with it. I can see where you're coming from. I don't mind changing it. But there were some places I was like, I am not changing it. Like, I will die on this hill. It is not changing.
Yeah, and that's fabulous. And then one final one. Tell me what it has been like now watching this with audiences, because you've gotten it across the line. It's such a powerful message. And then what has your experience been here?
Audiences is very interesting. I think like what I really want the people to the end of it to be like, tell me more about immigration. Like, tell me more, like, ask questions around that. People do have questions about, like, how the film ends, why the film ends the way it does. They have other questions around, like, the love story. But I think what is universal about it is there are questions about the system, and some people are like, is that real? And I'm like, yeah, it's what happens. And here it was great because, I think people really felt like what the main character goes through, what Isha goes through. I think that when they realize it's like loosely based on my story, they're like, oh my God, this is actually really real. And I always say I didn't go through all of that. Some people have gone through that, not me per se. And I think, it was interesting. There was a guy who came up to me and he asked me a question about like just immigration. I mean, about like what, he was interested in why people were so hell-bent on getting to the US and the UK. Like they come to France, they still want to leave. Yes, it's a language thing. But we had a conversation around like, it's also about, post-colonial in the sense of most African countries, well, West African countries were either British colonized or French colonized. So if you're from a a British colonized country, you've been told, for like all your life, like the UK is where it's at. It's like you've been sold the vision, you've been sold this idea of like the dream or the American dream. Like, so for you, it's like, I want to go there because you were told from when you were a kid, it's the place to go. The pound is greater than your money. And it's all these different things that it's so subconscious. And so you might come to France, be like, oh no, it's in the UK, it's French. I don't know. I'm going to try and get there because I was told that is where it is to make my money. And then they get there and they realize it's nothing of what they were told. But I think in that conversation with him, what was good about it, because I'm hoping it made him kind of go, oh yeah, like that is true. Like I never thought about it that way. Because I think the thing about immigration is when the media, like newspapers report it, it's so collectivized that there's no nuance to it. It's just like people are coming and there's a problem and they're taking your jobs and we have asylum hotels and all of this. Nobody actually talks about like why are they coming? What is happening back in their home that makes them come? And then let's go back deeper into the things that they believe about coming across and where that comes from.
Yeah.
And just like when you realize that, you kind of go, okay, I get it. Like, people come because they want a better life. Yeah. People come because they're poor and they think like, if I can earn pounds, I can send it back home to my family. And the reality is like, they don't care how they earn the pounds. So they're willing to do jobs that nobody else would do because pounds is, is greater than their own currency. So for some people, earning £300 a week equates to like a monthly wage back at home. But like for us, it's nothing over. So I think all these different conversations we never think about because we're just so used to being told they're taking your jobs,
But they aren't working those jobs.
They're not working those jobs, exactly.
Because they'll be crying out for people to do those particular things.
Exactly.
So.
And for those guys doing it, it's like they're making more than what they would make back at home. And, even again, the thing about how systems operate, most of these currencies are judged against the pound or the dollar. So if your currency, like for instance, in Nigeria right now, it's like 400 naira to like £1, which is like ridiculous. And I think actually it's gone up now, but it's ridiculous. So
your cost of living on an average wage, or your quality of life is probably higher.
It's higher. So like,
because you have like kind of community childcare that is free because it's everyone's mammy. It's like you have all these different things. You have like a life rather than like comparing sort of like to sort of like in a different place isn't
going to make sense. So I think like when you look at all of these things that are happening, you then realize, okay, but I think that for me, I just want people to watch a film and just expand their views a little bit.
Promise no political conversation. No, so it won't. But it is. What
it
you're
is a
doing
political film.
Yeah, what you're doing is bringing the humanity and the personal experience to it in a way that it's impossible not to connect with.
Yeah.
And audiences have been really I suppose the thing that you're doing is starting that conversation, which is the main thing.
Yeah.
And connecting with people emotionally. And what has been your experience here in France? So that question came from Dinard's audience. What has, do you feel the reception here is different to the UK?
I think the reception here is more inquisitive. I mean, I have my UK premiere next week at LFF, so I'll know what the reception is there. But going to other countries, like not just here, but like it's been very inquisitive here, which is great. And I think it sparks conversation. When I was in Zurich. It was less immigration question. It was just more like actually different audiences. One audience was more immigration. A younger audience was more like story. They were more about the love story. But in most places I've been to, actually when I was in Amsterdam, it was more focused on the immigration because they have a similar issue. And they're actually theirs is worse than what we have in the UK as well. So depending on the place I'm at determines what kind of conversation it is. I was in Cologne and it was less immigration. Well, it was a mixture. It's half immigration, half love story. So it's been fascinating going to all these different countries and having people talk about like whether it's immigration in the UK or it is immigration in their country or it is a love story. But I think for me, even going to somewhere that doesn't know anything about the UK immigration system and for them to ask questions and for them to then bring their own experience of what it means to be in their country, I think it's great because I think for me, it's about how do we have these open conversations about immigration in a way that we're told it's such a collective problem as opposed to kind of digging deeper and go, is it though? And maybe let's think about what policies our governments are making. Let's think about like, not just at home, but also abroad. I think those foreign policies also affect people coming across and why they come across. And also, a quick sidebar, but even just things like when you think about the few countries that are poor, but they owe millions to richer countries. And those countries, you're basically taking away from their system. So they can't even help their people grow. So then the people there leave.
Especially if you've plundered all their resources for
Exactly
that
that.
amount of years. Like,
Exactly.
you've literally stolen all their shit and
Yes.
you owe me money because I built a road to take all your shit out of your
anyway.
country. Yeah, you didn't even really probably ask for.
Exactly that. And then suddenly you wonder why those guys are leaving the country because they can't afford to live there. Or they can't afford, but like it's poor because like you've taken everything. Yeah. And so even if we have those conversations and kind of like go, okay, that's the reason.
Yeah.
But I think it's about just having more open conversations about immigration.
Yeah. And it's so good. Thank you. So lovely. So
Thank you.
good luck. Yes, it's hopefully fingers crossed for some awards. And it's for a premiere in the UK.
I'm very excited about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening, and a big thank you to the Dinard British and Irish Film Festival for supporting this episode, and make sure to subscribe to Film Ireland wherever you get your podcasts.